Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast today is brought to you by our Patreon page. Visit patreon.com/Gear Network. That's Patreon, patreon.com/GERE Network. And look over the memberships to subscribe. For as little as $1 a month, you could receive this podcast and every other podcast from January 1st of 2020 onward, completely commercial-free, as well as advanced releases of every podcast. If you sign up for as little as $3.50 or more, you not only get that tier, but you also get exclusive podcasts, exclusive content, including the brand new GNE podcast, Gear Network exclusive podcast, starring me, John Cimino, of course. So, again, patreon.com/Gear Network, completely commercial-free and exclusive content. Do it right now for as little as $1 a month.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hey, this is Kip Winger, and you're listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vegas.
What's up, Rock Soldiers? Welcome back to another episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. I'm your host, the Rockstar Robbie Vegas, coming at you with a fun interview today with Mr. HC Loc, ECW original, Ring of Honor original, all-around awesome guy, one of my favorite opponents in the ring, but one of my favorite people in the locker room. So before we bring you that, I do want to remind you to stay tuned after the interview because I'm going to be bringing you some updates about the Nickel City Comic Con and Horror Fest. I'm going to give you a bigger list of guests and things that you could really sink your teeth into if you're thinking about coming to Buffalo May 15th, 16th, and 17th. So hopefully you guys are planning to do that. And if not, maybe some of these guests will sway your opinion. But before we do get into that interview, I also need to remind you to check out unchainedmuscle.uk. Unchained Muscle is where it's at for your gym needs as far as clothing. We got shorts, shaker bottles, hats, gym bags, tank tops, leggings, and of course they'll donate a portion of the proceeds to mental health charity. So make sure you check them out. Our Vegas 20 will save you 20% at checkout. So, I've held you up long enough. Let's get Loc on the line. All right, Loc, the first thing I want to do is just thank you for being on the show. I truly, truly appreciate your time, man.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. And now we're going to take a time machine all the way back because we need to know when you first discovered pro wrestling. That's my first question.
Wow. That's way back, so I'm not going to be able to give you a year. We'll probably look it up, but I remember I always on Saturdays have to cut wood with my dad, and I would do anything to get out of it. So one day coming in the house to pretend to use the bathroom, I turned on the TV instead. I remember seeing Adrian Adonis, but this was before Adorable Adrian.
Okay.
He was probably teaming with Murdoch at the time, so he had the leather jacket and all that stuff on. And I saw, and that's my first memory of it right there. I can remember him wrestling, but yelling at the crowd, and me not being aware what pro wrestling was, or if there was any entertainment value to it. I'm like, this guy. What's wrong with this guy that he's yelling at the audience? What's going? He's a real jerk, or he's mad about something. That's not supposed to happen at a professional sporting event, and I'd never heard of it before or seen it before. That's my very, very first memory.
Awesome. Okay, so who would you say inspired you to actually get into the business?
God, I don't know if there was. I guess if I really had to say, I would probably say, honestly, Hulk Hogan, just because I followed him so much when I was a kid. Not that my work's anything like his or ever could be or anything like that, but I came up right at that time where, I was watching when WrestleMania 1 happened, wasn't aware of how to get it. Of course, then it was just closed circuit, and then WrestleMania 2 was the first time they showed it on a pay-per-view, and that was, I remember coming home from school, and my mother had gone to the local cable place and picked up the special box you had to have for us to get it. So that was pretty exciting, but that was all to watch Hulk Hogan, all that stuff. So I don't know that he was my inspiration. I guess he was my biggest inspiration in the business as a fan. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I wanted to get into it, I was such a fan of all of it, that I don't know, but, and this might be one of your next questions, but, just being, the business has changed so much from those days, let alone how much it's changed in my time in the business, that I never thought I could because there was nobody my size. Even when I started, when I went to wrestling school, Rey Mysterio wasn't even on USD yet, so it's like there was nobody under 6 foot or at least, 5'8" like I am on national TV. So I didn't think I could do it ever, but I was always, if there was any way I could ever try, that was always going to be the plan.
So how old were you when you actually started training?
I started training when I was 20. So, I had my first match when I was 20. Before that, I can't remember how long, maybe a year, maybe 2 years before that, there was an ad for Al Snow's school in one of the PWIs or one of the Aftermax, something like that. And I got up the nerve. I used to be so nervous on the phone, but got up the nerve after several tries. You dial all the numbers but the last one and then hang up. I finally got up the nerve to call out there and talk to somebody. I didn't even know who it was. Years later, I found out it was probably D'Lo, but got somebody to send me the information on that school. But I'd never been away from home at all yet at that point. I'd always been, we might get into this, but I'd always been a drummer too. So like the plan was always to graduate high school and move to LA to be a drummer, and I kind of had that all set up. There was a Musicians Institute out there that I was going to go to be a part of. I was accepted to that and all that stuff, but pretty much more than anything else chickened out because I'd never really been away from home. And it was a little bit the same thing with this. Not so much chickening out because never being away from home, but just so sure that they wouldn't let me do it because I was so much shorter than anybody I'd ever seen. I didn't think it was possible. So when I was 20 years old, just the local evening news, like every town has, just as small as you can get. The local, the station's 20 miles away from here. Somebody came on for, Bob Bailey was his name, came on for the USWF Crunchers Gym opening up in Elmira, New York. And I went down there and I remember I sat for 45 minutes or an hour in the parking lot before I went in because I was sure they were going to let me do it. Mm-hmm. So my plan was to go in there and say, I don't care, can I just hang around? Can I sweep up around here? Is there something else you can have me do so I can be around this thing? And luckily it's pro wrestling. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but as you know, as we all know, it's pro wrestling, so they didn't care about that. They just wanted my tuition money. Right. So I had that, so I actually was like their first or second student. So that's how that started. 20 years old. Okay.
So who was the trainer there?
Well, the main trainer was a guy named HC Loc, who had a pretty good run he was a Pennsylvania guy, Ohio, Pennsylvania, a little bit in New York. He was part of a tag team called the American Patriots, and he did some job stuff on WWE TV, and he was good. He was a great psychologist. I think even he would tell you he wasn't like the super crispest bumper or anything like that, but in an old school way, he's really the first guy that, of course he was my trainer, but he was the first guy that really kind of got me to click about telling a story in there, and that it's not just about, well, I'll do this cool move, then I'll let you do this cool move, and I'll do this cool move, and you let me do this cool move, or whatever,
Yeah.
So he was good about that. Not a huge name guy by any means, but it was a place to start. And again, pro wrestling being what it was, and times haven't changed much, I ended up being somehow, by the grace of God, and that's what, and this is in a way, I've always felt, as corny as it sounds, that I was meant to do this, because I wasn't a high school athlete by any means, by no means, but somehow I just had an aptitude for it. And I quickly became, in our small little school, however many of us there was, 8 or 10 of us there, I became like a standout for it, and I was able to the point where they gave me a key to the gym so I could come down and get in the ring whenever I wanted to, stuff like that. And that very quickly, like maybe after only like 2 matches, turned into, hey, why don't you show the other guys stuff that you've learned or figured out, which is nothing, right? I just happen to be the best, maybe been doing the best of the guys in school, why don't you show the guys stuff? And then I don't got to bring this guy that I'm actually paying in every week. I'll only bring him in every other week or every 3 weeks or something like that. And the rest of the time, it was me just like, remember, he showed us this and blah, 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 blind leading the blind, and there's a whole lot of that in independent wrestling. But, so I just gave a big speech about that in my school the other day, but it's been happening a long time. But yeah, TC Reynolds was the main guy back then. Later on, it would be, I'd get trained from other places, as we all do, and I got to do a couple of Dory Funk's camps back when that was a pretty big deal. He was doing the dojos and stuff for WWE. Yeah. So that was cool. But, TC Reynolds, Elmira, New York.
So how did that all lead to you becoming a part of the original ECW in 1999?
That was pure, well, everything's luck, but that was just, chasing it. Just, I had taken on a student. Actually, if you remember from some of the ECW shows or the ECW pay-per-views, there was a character called Towel Boy. Do you remember that?
Yep, absolutely.
He, well, the way that he broke in for as much as he ever did was he contacted me, or maybe even his dad contacted me about training him. At this point, I'm maybe 4 or 5 years in, and I was doing well in the Northeast, and so I'd shown him a few things, but he had been in contact with the guys from RF Video, just kind of as a mark, totally as a mark, actually, just talking wrestling, and he'd talk to him all the time. They talked back to him, and he brought up that he's being trained and blah, 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 and they said, hey, if you want your trainer to ever come to ECW, just, have him show up to a show and he can get in the ring and work out and stuff like that. Basically, it was a setup to get me down there to get beat up, but that's exactly what we did, and we got up the nerve to do that. And my first day there, every day ever that I was ever at ECW, for 2.5 years or whatever it was, almost 3, I guess, there was always local guys that would show up because if you helped with the ring, you could get in the ring most of the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe not a TV or something, but, and do workouts with us, which typically meant, get beat up a little bit or do calisthenics or beat up I mean that in a very, professional working way, but beat up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, there was always a handful of them. The day I did it was in Wilkes-Barre, PA, and I was the only one there. So it was everybody against me. Which is just what it was. It was the whole roster of the guys that actually worked out. Of course, guys like, Van Dam and Dreamer and those guys, they didn't do the workouts, but, everybody else would be in there and everybody could tag but me, and just, blown to death, but, and who knows how well I did, but I did well enough that and hopefully was respectful enough that, I was told, thank you, and if you ever want to do it again, that's cool, and I did, and I helped with the ring. Mm-hmm. But that's all I really needed was to be told, well, if you want to do it again, you can stop by. So I think that maybe for another month, I did. I can't wait to. I think every single show. I'm sure I did every show there for maybe like a month, and I would help with the ring and do workouts, and that would the workout. Tracy Smothers typically ran the workouts. Mm-hmm. He had to do some cool drills. And then I got invited back to another Dory Fun camp. So, and that was where I met Amy Dumas, Lita. And she had just started with ECW, but really started, I hadn't even seen her there yet. So somehow missed her in passing, or maybe I wasn't at a show when she was, or something. I think she'd actually started and then gone to Puerto Rico and then was getting ready to go back or something like that. But I hadn't met her. But I met her there, and we became really good friends, and it was cool to have a like-minded individual down there for a week. And at the end of the week, there was my friend Dave DeJohn, who was Danger. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was a Northeast guy. Mm-hmm. I actually came out of the Albany area. We went to wrestling school together. And Amy, we were the only 3 who kind of just stayed back and asked Dory if we could talk to him and just see, what he thought, what our advice was. And ironically, I think Amy went first, and she came out. I guess it's not terrible to tell this story. She came out and she was all upset because he told her everything that she needed to do better in the ring, and he had quite a list. But he's like, but you got a lot of charisma, and you're beautiful, and you got a special look. There was no girls with tattoos in those days, and they had all the right contacts, and they sent pictures and to WWE and vouched for her as a person and as an athlete because she could do the moonsaults and all that crap. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. She just hadn't put all the pieces together yet. And of course, I think she did okay. But then after that, my friend Dave went in and got a good review. I don't remember exactly what he was told, but I went in. And out of everybody in the class, we were the only ones that asked for this opportunity for the one-on-one thing at the end of the week. And I remember exactly him saying, he's saying, you're one hell of a carpenter. It was the first time I'd heard that. It's funny because my shoot job is a carpenter, but I'd never heard that in pro wrestling before. He told me either that meant that you're the guy that can build a match. He said, you're one hell of a carpenter. He said, this is an exact quote. I'm not blowing smoke. This is what Dory Funk Jr. said about me. He said, you're a hell of a carpenter, and I'm sure you can draw money for any company in the world, and I want help. I'm like, holy shit. And he says, I think ECW is the best fit. He says, and if you'd like me to, I'll call Tommy Dreamer tomorrow. And that's really how that happened. And I went out and I was all excited and called my dad and blah, blah, blah. And so he did. So the next week I showed up to ECW in Queens, which is the worst possible ring crew experience that anybody's ever had in the history of the business, that old Queens building, because we carried the ring up the fire escape and shoved it in through the window. And anyway, and then, but Draymond took us aside, took me and one other guy, the Musketeer, who ended up getting a little spot there as well, said, all right, I got a phone call about you. Talk out a quick match with him and go do it. And then now everybody's out there. Everybody on the roster's out there because Dory Funk called and said, keep an eye on this guy. And we did it, and we did well. And it wasn't like a match that's like, holy shit, we need this guy to main event every pay-per-view ever. But it was a good, solid, good match. And I was proud of it, and I'm sure if I saw it now, I'd cringe. But, at the time, it went well. And Tommy said, that was a great job. He says, you bump great, you sell great. He says, I can't offer you a job on the spot, but you never know when we'll need a body, and you're welcome to show up anytime you'd like. So that was my green light. So again, after that, I never, ever, ever missed a show. It was 2 months after that I never missed a show, but I was there for setup, workouts, hope to get a match, tear down, all those things. I think maybe I got a match or two on a house show in those times. Until once again back in Wilkes-Barre, this is funny because this is how this all comes together.
Right.
And I have long-winded answers. I should have warned you about that.
No, that's perfect.
But we get back to Wilkes-Barre, the same town where I had my first half-ass tryout type of thing, where I just got beat up in the ring. And it was the night before the show where we pulled into Wilkes-Barre. I called home to my then wife, and she had told me that she was pregnant with my son, who I'm looking at right now, who's going to turn 20 this year. And I said, wow, okay, and I sat there and I was rooming with Tony DeVito, who was my wrestling soulmate. I'm sure we'll get into that later. And Angel, who was Angel of the Baldies, and the three of us were always like brothers, along with Mike Keener, the ref. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, man. I said, life's changing. I already had 2 little girls at home, but we were making it somehow,
Yeah.
And but now she's going to be pregnant, and I'm going to be gone. And I said, okay, I don't know. I've got to, it's kind of that shit or get off the pot moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And as I understand it, the next day, I'm sure this is what happened. Angel went up to Bill Alfonso and just told him that story. Loc's wife's pregnant, and he's here a lot, and I don't know what you think of him, or if there's anything you do for him, but, he's kind of at that crossroads of deciding what he's going to do. And a little while later, I didn't know he said that, but a little while later, Bill Alfonso comes up to me, and he says, hey, I want you to go get Angel, DeVito, Mike Keener, Roadkill, Danny Doring, Chris Chetty, probably Tom Marquez, kind of everybody that's been on the ring crew over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years up until then, just kind of that level of guys, opening match, mid-card guys, that kind of like the nuts and bolts of the actual team, like the show won't go on without these guys, type of thing, and I did, and I said, hey guys, Fonzie wants to see it. So I got everybody around, and I'm not really knowing what's going on. And Fonzie says, you sit down too, Loc. I said, okay. And he looked at me and goes, this meeting's about you. And the shit started flowing down my pants. I'm not kidding you. This meeting's about you, he said. And I'm no. He goes, I just want you to know that the reason why I told you to get these specific guys is because every single one of them has come to me over the last few months and on your behalf, and they've asked that me to do something for you here if I could. You show up. You've never been told you have to. You haven't gotten paid yet. You weren't told you had to be here. You just did because you want to be part of this. You've been paying your dues. And I just want you to know that I've talked to Paul and I've talked to Debbie Beaumont, who was like the money lady, and talked to Tommy Dreamer. And starting next week, you're on the payroll. You're here full time with us if you want. I'm like, holy shit. And they like applauded. I'm like, holy shit.
Wow.
So that's how that started. And if you've ever heard, I've probably told you this in private before, or have heard me talk about these days, that was a lot of work from then on out, but it was awesome, but I mean, there was really, I would drive the ring truck to the place, I would set up the ring, do workouts with Tracy, sell the t-shirts, wrestle, referee, ring announce on the same show, tear down the ring, load the truck, and drive to the next town.
Oh my God.
So when they talk about paying your dues. You know what I mean? So when I hear somebody say about, oh my God, I drove 3.5 hours to the show or whatever, I'm like, that's cool, man, but I don't have a ton of sympathy for you. I mean, how do you think we all did it? You know?
Right.
And I've always told people that, you know, before I even started to have matches, I'd be ringing the bell. So, you know, and then in between matches, I'd sweep up the ring, and I'd do it as fast as I could, and I'd clean it up, you know. And, you know, like CyberSlam 2000, if you remember, they used to have those CyberSlams, or maybe it was CyberSlam 99, something like that.
Yeah.
We're at the arena, and somebody broke a table, and there's a bunch of shit in there. And, you know, the match gets done, it's hotter than a son of a bitch in there, everybody's dying of heat. I throw the table out in between, I grab a push broom, and I sweep that son of a bitch as fast as I could, and of course I'm getting the huge, sweep it up, asshole, sweep it up, chance, you know. But, you know, that's like my theme music by this point. Yeah. I get done doing it, but I do it really fast so that I hop out of the ring, get over to the bell so they keep going. And I got a standing ovation in the goddamn ECW arena. I'm not sure that ever happened again. But it was like they got it, you know. They recognize somebody working hard for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always told everybody that came in after me, and I told every student I've ever had or anybody that's ever asked me for advice, that if you're at a company like that or any place, you know, you have to show your work ethic. You have to show how bad you want to be there. You can't be like, I saw guys come in after me that were told that, you know, maybe they got to do the workouts that day, and they're asked to, hey, yeah, you did all right. Would you mind ringing the bell tonight? Sure. You know, and then somebody tell them, hey, sweep the ring in between there. And they're doing it like with one hand, shuffling along, so they don't really want to sweep. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dude, you know, that's, you know, it sounds corny, but that's as important as having a good match. I mean, are you part of this team or not? Do you want this or not? You know, it's we're supposed to be professionals at work right now, and every job matters as much as the next one. Yeah. You know, so that's how that thing spiraled. That's how all that happened. Anyway, that's how I got into ECW. See, long answer.
That's okay. Those are the answers I like. So I do have a question, though, about WWE, because I know you did enhancement work for them. So sure. What was the process to do that at that point in time? I know what it is now, but what was it at that point when you were doing it?
That was mailing a picture and a resume. No tape or anything. But they just wanted a picture and a resume, and Howard Finkel was in charge of the extra talent in those days. Mm-hmm. And I would call him, you know, again, dial his number 15 times to call him once, because, you know, I'm scared. But, you know, and I would call him all the time if he was anywhere in the Northeast until he finally picked up. And then I spoke to him quite a few times, and, you know, and then I'd check back in, and I'd say, hey, did you get my picture? No, I haven't got it yet. And I'd call again next week. He said, oh, I got 2 since then. So I guess I got them both here, you know. So, and then I can remember coming home one day and, you know, probably, you know, not in the best of moods, not the best day at the regular job. I'm like, God damn it, something's got to happen with this wrestling thing. Mm-hmm. And he was on my voicemail saying, oh, we can put you to work this whatever. I think it was a Tuesday. Maybe it was a Monday the first time I did it. So, I was excited about that, and that was the first time I did it. And I didn't do it very much because my one match that aired pretty, you know, somewhat famously, at least famous to the people that know me in my career, was against Luna, and it was actually, you know how they change history all the time, but at the time it was billed as the first intergender match in WWE history, and it was me versus Luna Vachon, and Dustin beat me up beforehand, and she did her thing, pinned me 1, 2, 3, and it went really well, and I was all excited that it happened at all, you know, and it's good payoff, and like, holy shit, driving home, I just worked for the WWE. I just worked for the WWE, WWS at the time. And that was a taping on a Tuesday, aired the next Monday. Of course, your phone blows up immediately after. No cell phones in these days. And if you, maybe, you might not remember, but there's a guy, I still see him on Facebook once in a while, but there was a guy who did a lot of jobs in the 80s there and worked a lot of the house shows and stuff, and AJ Petruzzi. He's an Allentown guy, and we do all the tapings, and he called and was just bitching at me, you know, and saying, oh, you did too good a job, you bumped too good for her, and he says, you should have said no. If somebody comes up to you and asks you to, he tells you how dated this is, right? Yeah. Somebody comes up to you and asks you to do something like that, that's when you pretend you're sick and go home, blah, blah, blah. Because they'll use you now, but they'll make a joke out of you. Next time they call you, you don't return their call, or you don't go back for a while, you know, something like that. And, you know, and at this time, here's the veteran telling me this. I think I'm 3 years in at this, but that was 98, and I broke in 95. So, yeah, I'm 3+ years in at that point, you know. And, you know, you think you know everything, but you don't know shit, right? So I'm listening to this guy, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, so I didn't go back, you know, and then I didn't do another taping after that because I was advised not to, which in hindsight is probably a mistake, but, it all worked out well. I mean, I could have maybe developed a better relationship with them or got some cool dark matches or any of the things a lot of other people did, but it was less than a year later that I ended up starting with ECW, so it didn't matter too much, but,
right. Right.
And now I would consider that bad advice. I don't know. But I mean, I'm a job guy, It'd be one thing if I'm Brock Lesnar or whatever, but, and plus I was very small, that's why I was the guy that got asked to do it. So.
Okay.
But, that was my big, it's funny, I worked a show this last weekend, and they say, you never know, sometimes you don't know how they're going to announce you, as and they'll say, ECW Original, former Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champion, former WWE Superstar, because of that one match with Luna. But, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but.
Well, speaking of Ring of Honor, I want to ask you about that, too, because you were with Ring of Honor from 2002 to 2005. You were a tag team champion in the Carnage crew. So how did you end up going to Ring of Honor?
Well, the Ring of Honor was started by the guys from RF Video, who I knew very well because they were at every single ECW show. When they'd announced that they were going to do it, I just emailed them. And they knew me very well, too. And I said, boy, I'd really like to be a part of this. And they said, well, can you mail us a tape of something you've been doing lately? And I did. And they liked it. And I was in a tag team at the time called The Hate Machine, actually. It was me and actually a student of Tony DeVito's who worked under the name Sledge. He and I were doing some tag stuff around New York and Vermont and wherever, Northeast stuff. And we'd mail the tape in. We had a pretty cool, aggressive style, or so I thought, and so that's what we were going to. So actually, I guess I have the honor of being able to say I was the very first in-ring talent to walk through a Ring of Honor curtain, because to set all this up, the angle was I was going to play off being the Extreme Official in ECW, where I would referee the first match in Ring of Honor history. Then a couple matches later, I would ref Homicide's match and get into it with him, and he'd bloody me up and do some stuff, and that was going to be my first feud with me and this partner I was going to bring in against Homicide and his partner.
Okay.
And that's how that went down, and then, not to speak ill of the guy, but my then tag partner came in the show afterwards, and we went out and did our thing, and we went over like a fart in a phone booth. It was bad, it was Philly's rough anyway. They didn't give a crap, and and I just couldn't snap him out of the deer and headlights thing, when we were there, and when we were there in the moment of it, this is a heavy duty crowd, it's not, upstate New York or whatever, and they were on his case pretty bad and not buying what we were doing. He went out there, and I got the phone call. I mean, he'll never hear this. I'm sure he doesn't follow the business anymore, so I don't mean to say things that, might hurt his feelings, but the exact phone call I got was, Sledge just doesn't have it. He looks green as grass. And then Mike Johnson wrote an article that said the same thing about him. They were complimentary of me, but the Ring of Honor folks said, hey, just pick one of your students, because I'd have brought Don and Marcos there with me. Pick one of your students and have him be your tag partner, and then the idea then would be just, we come in and kind of be an underneath team for folks to beat or whatever, and just kind of whenever, an underneath team.
Yeah.
And I said, I could do that, but, I said, what do you think about Tony DeVito? And he goes, I love Tony DeVito. Oh my God, I love him. I go, yeah, me too. He's been my buddy forever. I think he was on the first show I was ever on, and let me give him a call. So I did, and he really loved the idea. And so if you were to ever watch the first home video release of Ring of Honor, I cut a promo where I'm on the phone talking to this guy I'm going to bring in. And at the time, we thought it was Sledge, and then Sledge didn't work, so that got cut out from it. That was never made a home video or anything like that. So when my mystery guy on the phone shows up, it's DeVito that we acted like I was talking to.
Okay.
So, and then that started that. That was, depending on, nostalgia or how I'm feeling, it's hard to describe, hard to pinpoint what was the best time of my career, be it ECW or Ring of Honor, but in many ways it's got to be Ring of Honor, just because team with DeVito it's just like butter, it was just perfect for me, I was really happy with that.
Okay, very cool. Now, earlier you talked about how you're also a musician, so I'm just going to steer away from wrestling for just a minute, because I want to know how long you've been in the music business. Like, when did you start that journey?
Well, that's the first thing I ever remember wanting to do. I mean, like, I can actually, before I have memories of wanting to be a drummer, there's pictures of me playing drums, and I can remember my mother telling me that I always said I wanted to be a drummer before I even remember the story she's telling me about. So that's the first thing I ever wanted to do. And then one of my very best friends' house is still one of my best friends. Now owns a recording studio, and I still write music with. But at the point in time where, like, legit, maybe second grade, we're making drums out of pine wood, building a square box. That's all we could do.
Yeah.
And taking the 2-liter pop bottles and stretching them over the top, and those would be our drum heads. And he had, like, the Sears and Roebuck guitar rig, like the Christmas catalog guitar rig. I think maybe my mother bought it for him, actually, because she was that kind of mom. She was cool.
Yeah.
And setting the Christmas lights up, those are our stage lights. Going to the old Radio Shack and get the little crappy little mics that, you know, went into the old little cassette recorders, but plugging them into something, I don't know, like probably that same Sears Christmas catalog guitar amp, you know, and getting a strobe light for Christmas. I think that's great. And all the time I remember thinking, well, we'll save this for someday when we're doing arenas. We already got our strobe light, you know, and so it's kind of been forever. And then we added another guy who's still one of my best friends. It's a pretty amazing story, who at the time was showing talent for playing keyboard in school. We weren't even in high school yet, not even close. And that morphed into him being a bass player just because we needed a bass player. And now in my area, like 2 or 3 counties around here at least, he's, you know, kind of thought of as like a legendary bass player around here. He's just amazing. And it's funny how those things start. But yeah. 3 of us and another guy that was like the son of one of my mother's friends from work, and it's just like, oh, that's a musician almost our age? Okay, you're in the band. And I don't know how old we were. Probably 15 at that point. I think it was 15, and we ended up getting a gig at a local bar that's still only 2 miles from where I'm sitting right now, and I don't know. We couldn't have been very good, but we were probably good for kids, you know, and plus there's just the idea that there's kids doing it. And they hired us for like a year there. We played every Wednesday and every Sunday there for I don't know how long. For like a year probably. And amongst doing other gigs around, and there's a place down here at the time called the Fireside Chat that had an in-house PA and an in-house light system, which for me, dude, I thought I made it. The first time we played there, I think it was 92. 91, no, it was 91. It was the first time we played there. And I did not know the difference between that and Madison Square Garden. I was so excited. That was all covers, of course, writing a song once in a while, but that morphed into writing our own stuff, and then learning about the recording aspect of things, and buying a lot of gear, and renting a lot of studio time, and going back and forth from that, and putting out some 2 or 3 albums, you know, metal albums by that point, and touring behind them a little bit. There's during where these two things cross was during Ring of Honor, my Ring of Honor stint. I kind of got known for. I was well known as a wrestler in our, you know, circle of, if you're a wrestling fan, I was quote unquote name guy there. Mm-hmm. But that helped me get attention for my band. So we got some really cool reviews. Like they're still hanging on my wall. Like there's a Metal Edge article, 2-page article in Metal Edge about my band, but basically how there's this guy that tours as a drummer and a wrestler type of thing. And for a short while, we had a manager that was trying to hook up this thing where, and it would have been cool, he wanted to do something with our band where every City Ring of Honor wrestled later on that night at some local club. The band would play, and that never really materialized, but I thought that was an awesome idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when that record came out, it was a band called Full Blown Zero, which is still probably the thing I'm most proud of musically that I ever did. So there was Hit Parader and Metal Edge, and which was like when I was a kid. You know, I couldn't wait for those magazines to come out. And now there's not only an article about me and my band and both of them, but it's also referring to me as a wrestler. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. You know, and so it's really cool. They hang on my walls. And then one came out in Metal Maniacs around the same time, reviewing the same record, talking about how much that reviewer thought our record sucked. I kept that one too, because, you know, if you believe the good stuff, you got to believe the bad stuff too, because it's just somebody's opinion. So
right.
But I, you know, at least, so I kept that one too. But that one doesn't hang on the wall. but at any rate, that was a cool time. So that was my pinnacle of music, and one of my pinnacles of wrestling. I'm lucky I've gotten to have a few different uptakes in a few different decades. So I've been lucky as far as that goes.
Okay, that's awesome, man. Like, I've been dying to ask you about that, and I was purposely saving it for this podcast. So, because we recently found out, like, we have a common act that we both opened up for with Wednesday 13.
Right.
And, we're both musicians, we're both wrestlers, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. But I wanted to pick your brain on that, but I was like, this is a podcast conversation. Because I wanted to hear it for the first time on here.
We actually opened for Wednesday 13 at, it was a pretty famous place. It was a club called Metro in Chicago, right across from Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. And it was a breast cancer benefit type of thing. So it was us. There's a really big local Chicago band. Being a big local band in Chicago is way different than being a big local band in Corning, New York, where I am. So they actually had like a real following, and they had like these intelligent lights that came around with their actual logo on them. Like, oh shit, they're called Skank, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And then Soil, who was our good friends, the singer at the time, the singer for Soil. If you remember that, they had the songs Halo and all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
Their second singer, his name is AJ Cavalier, and he grew up in my town. He's one of my best friends. So, and then Wednesday closed that show, but yeah, that was really cool. It was a little bit of I don't get stage fright. I don't think any of us did, but it was one of those things where you're so hyped up for it that the performance didn't live up to the hype very much. The monitors weren't very good. I was one of those, God, I wish because you're the opening act anyway, so
right.
How good are the monitors going to be? And so it was kind of always one of those ones where we wish I had a do-over at, but that was really cool. That was the show we did Wednesday.
So do you always plan on being involved in music, just like with wrestling?
Yeah. I mean, right now, I'm supposed to be doing tracks for a buddy of mine who is actually the singer in that band, Full Blown Zero, and I've known him forever. Has been in the studio a lot lately, getting song ideas and doing pre-production for an album, and even like sending ideas with reason beats, with computer drums, just to get ideas of stuff down. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of one of those, like, when we can carve some time out, there's no rush, as far as, it's not like we're going to, at our age or anything, especially with original metal music, right? We're not looking to, make $1 million and go on tour. It's just a matter of getting the album up to do it, and to play. And if somebody buys it, cool. If not, we'll probably give it away. Just something to do to be creative, But the problem with it is me doing it right now, up until maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I played drums a lot locally in cover bands, country cover bands. Actually, one of them was a big drawing act around here. It was with a woman singer named Wendy Owens, and she had a huge following. And there's a concert venue down here called Tags, which we got to open for some acts at a couple times, with 5,000 or 6,000 people there. That was pretty sick. Mm-hmm. But and mainly playing covers and a couple of her originals. But as far as this project and anything else I do, I'll always do it and I'll always love it. But what I always tell those guys, and it's hard for bandmates to understand, but I wish I could play drums every week. Live performances my world revolves around performing live, whatever it is, drums or wrestling. But the fact of the matter is, I'm 45 years old, that's, and I can play drums with you when I'm 60 or when I'm 70. I cannot wrestle when I'm 60 or I'm 70, so, and right now I'm kind of have this, be it me or be it the industry just being ready for some old ECW stuff or old Ring of Honor stuff, or certainly caring less than ever about people's ages. I don't know how that's happened. I feel very lucky, PCO being the world champ for a while there, and,
right.
and Ring of Honor, and a lot of other. I mean, how many people, I don't know how old Tommaso Ciampa is, but he's got the gray in his beard, and that would have never happened, half a generation ago, let alone a generation ago. They wouldn't have been allowed. AJ Styles is, I think, 43 now. Dustin's, I think, almost 51,
right.
And so, I'm really, things are going well. I'm getting booked in cool places, and I'm getting the chance to do very, very cool things. And the industry is so hot right now, and there's so many places to work.
Yeah.
That I want to take advantage of that. I can't put wrestling on a shelf to play live music right now because I don't have enough time for that. If I have, and God knows how long, my goal is to wrestle actively, and by that I mean be relevant, be to a point where, I can still have one of the best matches on the card and be counted on for that, and maybe be a draw, and maybe be I don't know, maybe be worth some money, or whatever that be. I would love to do it for 5 more years, because I would be 50 years old, and that would be my 30th anniversary in the business. I'd get my 30 years. And then after that, if I do it as much as I can, as much as I feel good for, forever, that's fine. But I've recently gotten into, there's one place in particular that a few places now ask me to agent matches. I mean, every place I go, somebody, always people ask me to watch the matches, and that's my biggest compliment you can ever give me. If you see me at a wrestling show, if you care enough about my opinion to ask me to watch a match, I love that. I think that's really maybe what I'm best at, that type of thing, that coaching aspect of it. Even more so than taking a student from scratch, even though I love to do that still. But the more like watching the guy who's doing it and saying, that was good, but what if we just did this? And seeing the light bulb go off, and then next time and they get it, next time it is a little bit better. But there's a company right now that's called Capital Wrestling where I wrestle full time, but I also talk to me about money and time and scheduling, and of the last show we were there, I agented, that's a hard word to say, 6 matches as well. So, and by that, I mean like totally hands-on. Hey guys, this is what they want. I got the run sheet in front of me. You guys up. This guy's got to look a little strong. So I kind of had in mind this guy would pin this guy. You guys talk out your match. I don't want to step on your toes too much, but then come back and talk it back with me. And then they do, and I say, okay, great. How about this? Blah, 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 blah. And then I watch it. And then we meet, and then I say, you did all these things great, but what if you just did this? Or this is awesome how you do this. Make sure you do that next time. Or you should have done this there, and I think that would have worked out better. And I love that stuff. So what I'm getting at with that is that when my in-ring time has passed, when I just can't do it anymore, or at least to the point where I can't be relevant, where nobody's buying it anymore, as far as me looking like a tough guy or being able to do it, or if injuries add up or whatever happens, it's going to happen all of us someday. Then that, just recently this year, I've realized that, man, that is fun, and I can do that too. So, I mean, I could be around it forever, and that would free up more time to play drums, because I can play drums whatever, no matter how old I am. So,
right, yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And I mean, I don't think you're in any danger of not being relevant. I mean, I've wrestled you a bunch of times this year, and you definitely take me to my limit, so...
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. But, there's always something, I feel like I'm kind of at a weird crossroads where it's, I guess I'm starting to, on one hand, I still feel invincible. Like, it's great when we can feel that way as wrestlers. And I'm in between last year and this year, I'm kind of in the best shape as I've ever been physique-wise and muscular-wise. So that's good, and I feel powerful. But I've also, this last year, and I don't know bad luck or age or what. Actually, I can pinpoint it down to, and I don't think either of them's age or just stupidity. But in the last year, I tore my hamstring, and that thing turned black as heck and screwed me up for a little while. And I legitimately broke my neck, which sounds awful, and turned out to not be that devastating, but it sure was scary. And I broke my neck, I took a bad DDT, and how many of those have I taken? 500, 1,000? I don't know, and, went fine through all of them, and I just took one bad one. Yeah. So, which, not to get on another tangent, but that's why when I see these guys just taking these huge, crazy spots and these crazy bumps, and I get it. You want to give the people your all, and you want to stand out, and you want to do all those things, but man, pick and choose, because I took a regular DDT, and I broke my neck, and I'm pretty darn good at this. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, let alone when you do your whatever on the off the top to the outside, blah 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 blah, and you're just praying that you don't get hurt, hoping that somebody catches you. You know what I mean? I'm not saying don't do those things, but man, be choosy. It's make sure it's a show where somebody's gonna see you. Make sure you get paid something. I don't know. But the stuff we do is no joke, man. It's it can maim you, it can kill you, it can alter your life, and and we are giving people of our we're sacrificing potentially the quality of our lives and our future for this thing that we love, and hoping that the people appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with zero regrets. I think almost all of us can say that with zero regrets. But we got to be smart enough to kind of keep ourselves as safe as we can when we can. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because, we all go home to our families, too, so as much as we want to entertain the people and hope that they remember us and enjoy it, we also have to be us for the people we love,
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, though, you mentioned earlier that you have students in a school right now, so that must be really gratifying for you at this point in time to be doing both.
It is. It's cool. I do it. I do it for a small lending company down here called NTW, who's a growing company, I will say. You know, they've got some growing pains, so I think they're doing some things right. I'm trying to help when I can, and there's some guys that I really like, but it's not, I mean, I don't own the ring, I don't own the building, anything like that. They just kind of hired me as the head trainer. The problem that we have there's no problem with the place, I don't want to start it like that. The problem with the training there, with my setup there, is that it's a weeknight thing. The school's only open for 2 nights a week because that's the only nights they have the building.
Okay.
And I can only get there one of those, and it's over an hour away from my house.
Mm.
So even though it's worked well, and you've seen some of my guys. John the ref has been at UPW a lot lately. He'll be there this weekend.
Yep.
TJ Epics and Adon Allen, they're all my kids, and I couldn't be prouder of them.
I've worked with all three.
Yeah, and they're doing well, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Like, even if you can tell they're not seasoned veterans, you probably wouldn't believe that they're 6 months in either. You know, they're doing good. So I'm very proud of them. And they listen, and I try to budget my time wisely with them and everybody else down there because I don't have a lot of time with them. Problem is I want to have more time. So I just set up my own ring and my lawn last week, actually, you know, which I don't know how that's going to work out school-wise, but it's that's kind of always been like a lifelong dream for me to just have one there because I'm totally that guy that's sitting on the couch and it's 10 o'clock at night and it's like, holy shit, I got an idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tell my son, hey, lay down there for a second. You know, let's walk through something, you know. And now I'm like, turn on the back of the light in the back because there's a ring out back. But, you know, so that could be something. I have I have a line on a couple buildings here right close to my house so that I can, you know, to not leave those guys hanging down there, let alone the students that are local to that school. I would still do that, my 1 night a week there, but I got to start, within the next month or two, I'll be able to kind of make an official announcement of something where I can do 3 or 4 other nights a week closer to my house so that it's, you know, more feasible for me to do that.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. I enjoy taking people from scratch and seeing what they can do. And like I said, I have everybody from these guys that are already getting booked around, and I'm already thinking that they can hang with a lot of people in the ring. They've got the athleticism, they got the right. I know that they're broken right. I'm confident in that their etiquette is okay, they're respectful, and that they're doing things that make sense. And I have no problem praising them and being their best friend and putting my arm around them and telling them I'm there for them, you know, and they can call me in the middle of the night, which they do, and they need advice or they just left a show and what should I have done here, I'm right there for them for that. I'm also the first guy to holler if I have to at them because that's what you do, you know what I mean? And that's done with a lot of caring too, you know, if I didn't care, I wouldn't say nothing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And on the flip side of that, I got a young man down there. He goes by the name of Damian Antler. He's actually an autistic young man. He was in the Special Olympics when he was young, and he always dreamt of being a pro wrestler. Mm-hmm. And part of me was like, should I even allow him to do this? You know, because I don't want to take his money. Yeah. I don't want to get him hurt. I don't want to be some carny that's just like, well, I'll take anybody here. You know, but I thought about it a little bit and had a discussion with his dad. It was like, you know, if I can just let him be around it because it's his dream so much. If I can just let him be around it and he can kind of live his dream, that, you know, that might be really special for him. You know, At the same time, I have to be careful there because I don't want to ease up on anybody because I feel like it disrespects the whole thing. But I am aware of his situation, and he's expected to do what everybody else is, and he does well. And he tries as hard as he can. And I'd rather have anybody. You know, I've had guys come in and out that are just, they can do everything first try, but they're kind of dicks, and I don't want to be around them, and they're not going to represent me well, so they got to go, you know?
Right. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. If you come out of my school, or even if you come to one of my camps and all those things, I can't have you, then later somebody ask you about who taught you and have you say me if you're going to, I feel like that chips away. 25 years I've got into this, right? And if somebody shows up and they're taught, you know, and they're whatever, they're not being as respectful as they should be to a veteran. I won't even say disrespect, so I don't think anybody's that dumb that I taught. But if they make the mistake of, and I've had to yell at guys for this, with you, as a matter of fact, the very first time, you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
Wanted to say, it was the very first time, and you started telling him what you're going to do, and he said, well, how about we do this? And I go, shut up. No, shut your mouth and you listen. If he asks you to do something and you don't think you can do it, you can tell him that respectfully. If he asks you to do something and you're not sure how to do it safely, you can tell him that and he'll tell you how to do it. But you don't suggest a thing. You keep your mouth shut. You're here to learn. And, that's the type of thing I can't have right there. Hopefully we nipped that in the butt there. I'm not so sure we did, to be honest with you. I've had to have conversations like that since. But those are the guys that can't last with me because I can't have somebody coming into a locker room and everybody going, where the hell did this kid come from?
Right.
And then finding out he came from me. You know what I mean? That's I feel like we work hard for whatever. If you have a shitty reputation in this business, or if you have a good one, you work hard to get it, right? And you end up with the reputation you deserve. And by hook or crook, and I'm not sure how. I'm sure there's some exceptions. I'm sure the people who hear this, that some people out here that won't think I'm that great or think I'm a jerk or whatever the case may be. But by and large, I'm showing a ton of respect in all of our locker rooms we go into, and people are very good to me and seem to think quite highly of me. So that's what I need to make sure that any of the next generation that comes from me, they've got to represent that because they have that too. I can't have them chip away at that because that's all I have. That's at the end of the day, we spend all the payoffs we made. Yeah. But it's somebody remembering, hey, that guy was really good hand, and he helped me out a lot, and he was always good to me, and he took a little bit of time to me, and I asked him advice, and he gave it to me. Or when he was a young guy, he knew enough to just kind of say yes or no, sir, and get just what I asked for him. Those are the guys you remember, and those are the guys that I want to bring into our sport from here on out.
Well, two things from my end, going off of what you just said. The first one is I had and still have so much respect for you that I still remember this moment meant a lot to me, and I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but I had a one-on-one match in a main event against Cyclone Jones. And after the match ended, I came back through the curtain, and you were the first one standing there, and you were like, where the fuck have you been? And
I do remember that. Yeah.
As soon as you said that, my whole world changed. I was like, oh my God, Loc thinks that I'm good. It meant everything to me. So the first time I faced you one-on-one, I was like, I have to prove myself again for the second time. Yeah. So that's just the respect that I have for you. And then all three of your students that you told stories about just now, I gave all of them their first match.
Yeah, that's right. You did. Yeah, that's right. And so things are going well for that on my end. I remember that match you had with the Cyclone, and then you and I had I wish we could have done it in front of a bigger crowd, but you and I had that one singles match, and that was awesome. Yeah. And I just watched the other day the three-way you and Cloudy had. And I watched that thing like, Jesus, that was damn near flawless.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
I watched it twice last week, and I was like, man, this is my favorite match that I've ever been involved in.
Yeah, it came out really good, and all the pacing was really well, and went really well, and those are the type of things that stick out like a sore thumb to me, Mm-hmm. And I even if I'm not looking for it, if I'm just watching it and I see somebody not sell something too long and pop up too fast, or rush something when he could have gone the next move, even when I'm not trying to pick it out, it just pops out and sticks out at me like a sore thumb, and I'm like, that didn't happen for many of the three of us. Yeah. Man, that was really good. That went really well. Except for I took the backdrop like shit in the first match. I'm going to blame it on Cloudy for not giving me a big enough boost. I can blame it on you, but you're the one I'm talking to.
Yeah, right.
But other than that was a really good match.
Well, I actually appreciate you saying even that right now. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. That was fun.
Staying in that same vein, who are some of your favorite opponents that you've been in the ring with over the years?
Oh, there's been a lot of them. My first favorite opponent was, my first opponent was Steve Carino. So, and I didn't wrestle him again till ECW, I guess. And, so he would definitely have to rank in there. In fact, today is the 20-year anniversary of, the match he had with Dusty Rhodes on pay-per-view where I was the ref and helped Dusty win after we did the whole angle where Carino busted me open with the cowbell, and I had, maybe a week or two after that, I had a singles match with Carino, and Dusty came out to help me. Dusty Rhodes come out to help me, right? So this business is doing something. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So definitely Steve Carino. He's a big pivotal point, really, for me, in that my first matches with him, my first singles match, I had a year's worth of other stuff, but my first singles match was with him. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of vouched for me a little bit and was there to give me some advice in ECW. And then we happened to just keep bumping into each other there, so that was always cool. But, dating back to when I first started, kind of like the first, indie name, indie darling was a guy named Reckless Youth. Mm-hmm. And so I wrestled him a bunch of times. and that was fun. I always learned a lot and stole a lot from him. So that was really cool. I would guess, fast forwarding, I loved anytime we did anything with either, with DeVito and I against a Special K, that was probably my biggest feud of my life, because we kept going back to those guys, and it was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I loved working with those guys. They were little, and they were up for anything. You know, you could do anything with them, and at the same time, they could do anything to you, so that was cool. And would love working with Danny Moff, and whoever his partner was, be it when he was in the Hit Squad with Steve, or later when it was him and BJ. We had a ton of matches with those guys, and that was awesome. Danny was a hell of a talent. Of course, his partners were too, but Danny was real special, and he was one of those guys that just that gentleman's agreement, you know. Don't punch me in the teeth, don't punch me in the eye, don't punch me in the nuts. Let's go out there and kind of lay it in, but you're never ever hurt, you know what I mean? It was just like football player or something, you know? And he was so generous. I always tried to be generous in the ring, but he was a guy that was real generous. I can remember we had a Falls Count Anywhere match, and it was in New Jersey, and the place was sold out, and I don't know how many people that would have been in that time. I'm sure over 1,000. And I just messaged him in the back before we went out there. I go, hey, Danny, just so you know, over there, way over opposite hard camera. He goes, yeah. I go, well, my kids are sitting over there. And he stopped me. He goes, say no more. So he started, you know, we got out. He started feeding over there, you know, and then, you know, we worked up the bleachers, and he said, toss me down the bleachers. So he rolled down the bleachers past my kids and all that stuff, you know, just very cool, you know. So I love working with him. I'm real happy for his success. Now, he's even older than me, and he just got a contract. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
You know, who knows what's going to happen in this business. So, yeah, man, there was lots of guys. I've been lucky along the way. Actually, believe it or not, when I was in the Indies before any of that happened, before ECW or anything, Ray Apollo, who was one of the Doinks on TV, I think he was like the second one or maybe the third one, but he did it like consistently. He wasn't just like a one-off guy.
Yeah.
When he came off TV, I wrestled him one time, and then he would be kind of booked on the same shows a lot, and he started to kind of request me. He'd see me there and went, oh, I love good match with that kid. So we did that a bunch. So that was fun. So I've been lucky. I've always had really good opponents. I mean, and I've had some real crappy opponents too. You know what I mean? But that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say now, years later, when, you know, I try to have a positive look out on everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we can just remember that, you know, I've probably told you this before, but wrestlers always find something to bitch about. It's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Now my payoff sucked, that ring sucked, my opponent sucked, whatever, the crowd sucked. Yeah, but we got to be wrestlers today, and that's pretty cool. You know, we always wanted to do that. And every time we do it, it's an opportunity. And I stress that to my students. I say it all the time, to the point where they get sick of hearing it. Everything you're asked to do, it's an opportunity. And, you know, go out there with this kid who's had 2 matches and they weren't very good, and well, that's an opportunity. Let me see what I can do to get something out of them, you know. And probably won't be a 5-star classic, but that's fun, man. If you can really be creative with it and say that's an opportunity for me to do that. Or, man, I'm sorry, I need you to go out there and lose in 2 minutes. And for a second, I said, oh, shit. And I said, you know what, man? But I can still find a way to make them remember me, and I can do that awesome. And I bet you they'll book me next time. And it's all an opportunity, you know. So we're lucky to be in the business, man. We just are. I mean, for all the bitching we hear people do about it, it's really a special thing that, you know, not everybody gets to do. And these days, with Twitter and whatnot, everybody thinks they're an expert, and we all know that, you know. But, you know, if you really are an expert and you really, really think about it, then you realize that, you know, that's a blessing, you know, and it's a special thing that we get to do. And no matter how much anybody thinks they know, they don't know until they do it. And the fact that we get to do it, we're pretty lucky. You know?
Absolutely. It's a huge blessing to be out there every single time. Time. Also, kind of staying in that same vein, is there anybody that you haven't worked with yet that you'd really like to before you're finished?
God, I'm chipping them off the list pretty good. There's probably a bunch. I'll say Trevor Murdoch, because I thought I was going to wrestle him last week, and shared a locker room with him, and he was a total like-minded individual, and I really dug him. And then especially when we were giving our philosophies, going back to talking about matches, and I heard him talk over his match, and he heard me talk over mine, and we're like, dude, I'm with you, man. That's the same philosophy I have. So that seems kind of fun. Right now, that would be on that list. I've chipped away at a lot of them. I would say locally, believe it or not, this isn't like a national name, but I really want to wrestle Anthony Gaines. That's a big one for me.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
That's probably my number one as far as like a Western New York type of match right there. Mm-hmm. And I guess as far as other people would go, I kind of got my sights on, not that I'm going there anytime soon. I don't want to act like I'm starting that rumor, but I kind of got I keep an eye on like the NWA roster a lot. So it's kind of that's my jam, that whole thing. Just kind of, a little bit of calling it in the ring and doing the non-scripted promos and all that stuff. I did that a lot. So, who knows? I put feelers out there and whatever, who knows? There's, but a lot of those guys, like Eli Drake, I think everything about him screams stardom. He's just everything about him is a star, and I'd like to work with him. A lot of guys. I'd love to work with C.W. Anderson again. Now that I'm not young, nervous, and green anymore.
Right.
Not a whole lot of specifics. It's funny that really, honestly, I guess my number one right now, just because I think about because you and I are kind of in the same circle of territories here.
Yes.
Of what I'll call our guys would be Anthony. He's because there's a lot of guys that like to wrestle again. I would wrestle Colin Delaney every night. I wrestled you a bunch more times. I like, a bunch of stuff like that. But as far as I haven't, as far as upstate guys or anybody from around the Northeast, Anthony's probably my number one, actually.
All right, excellent. Well, I guess that about wraps it up for me, and I don't want to take up any more of your night. So before we go, just plug any upcoming shows, appearances, let everybody know what your social media is so they could follow you if they already don't, and just kind of take the time to address whatever you want.
Thanks, man. Yeah, if you want to check me out on Facebook, you can probably search HC Loc or my shoot name, Matt Knowles, which nobody's ever going to remember. Unless you remember Beyonce's dad's name is Matt Knowles. I get that a lot. But she, in fact, people used to call my house in the middle of the night looking for Beyonce. True story.
Wow.
Anyway, but if you search, it's under that or HC Loc. But Twitter is at HC Loc1. And as far as the media upcoming stuff, this weekend, I don't know when you're going to air this, so this might be a little late by then, but today being Thursday, so in a couple nights, Saturday, UPW is kind of a homestead for me right there. We're going to be back in Rochester, one of, if not my very favorite places to work. Weekend after that, I'm somewhere in Alabama, so that's another very good plug. Weekend after that, I'm in Nashville, and the weekend after that, I'm going to Tampa if the world doesn't end by then with everything else going on. I don't know what's going to happen there, but so, there's always stuff like that going on. You can always catch me every month at every UPW show in Rochester, and every month at every Excite show in Binghamton. That's another cool place, too. Make sure you keep checking out this place called Capital Wrestling, which is actually rebranding right now, but if you search for Capital Wrestling, the production is so cool. I mean, the camera work and the way they do everything from a different approach is so awesome. And they're rebranding right now, but you can still find them under Capital Wrestling for a while. But I'm real proud of that place. It's fun to work there. That's a place I do a lot of agenting for as well. Real good roster. But yeah, man, there's some places to check me out a lot, and just keep plugging. And just this kid with a merely 25-year experience here, just trying to get along, trying to get booked like everybody else, man. It's going well, though. I'm a lucky man. So.
Well, I gotta say, I hope we get to work one-on-one a bunch more times, and I thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Hey, man, I'm gonna personally guarantee that's gonna happen, and I appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot, Robbie.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Rock Soldiers, so there's our interview with HC Loc. Hope you learned a little something if you didn't know who he was already. I'm sure most of you do. And I gotta say, just a guy that I respect very much, and somebody that I'm proud to say is a brother and a friend. I could always go to him for advice. In fact, I have. And he's just an excellent person to be around. He brings a great atmosphere to the locker room. Any locker room we've ever shared, no matter where it was, what stories we were telling, who was around. Always a very positive influence. So, as promised, before I let you go, I did want to drop some information about the Nickel City Comic Con at the Buffalo Convention Center. And I'm just gonna read off a little bit of my list here of people who are going to be making appearances I think you guys might be interested in. And of course, due to recent events, if there's any kind of cancellations, we will let you know. We'll keep you updated on that as well. So, Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, is going to be appearing. Anthony Michael Hall, who you'll know from Edward Scissorhands, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, and 16 Candles. Marina Sirtis from Star Trek. Jason David Frank, who was the Green Ranger and the White Ranger. We also got WWE legends Lex Luger, Sergeant Slaughter, and Hall of Famer, the man they call Sting. Danielle Harris is going to be there for the Horror Fest that's on the ground floor. She starred in Halloween 4 and 5, the remakes of Halloween, which Rob Zombie did, and of course Hatchet, which is one of my favorite series going right now in recent years. Rico Browning, who is the original creature from the Black Lagoon, and Mark Dodson, who was the voice of Gizmo and some of the other Gremlins gremlins. So check that out. Go to nickelcitycon.com for prices and information. Sometimes they run deals and specials, so check it out. May 15th through the 17th. If you can't make all 3 days, at least try and make one. Most of these people will be there every day, but some of them will just be Saturday and Sunday, so make sure you check on that as well. Thank you once more for joining me on the All Bets Are Off podcast. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and we will see you next week.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.
Welcome, everyone. This is Sleazy.
This is the Fat Man.
And the world-famous R-rated podcast is now on the Gear Network. The Wrestling Show with Sleazy and the Fat Man is classless and raunchy commentary on the wrestling business today. Our multiple hosts, including Sleazy the Fat Man, Chip Willett, and NEW owner Travis Kenning, give a differing take on news, rumors, reviews, and previews of the entirety of the worldwide pro wrestling market.
We do what we want, we say what we want, and we don't give a at all. That's just the way we go.
Check us out on the Gear Network.